real estate is a get rich slow activity. So one of the things we talk about here a lot at T&H is the value of holding real estate long term. And I know that can be difficult to think about, maybe conceptualize, like owning a property for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, because a lot of landlords today are living in that day-to-day moment because things can get really difficult. So I thought I'd put some color around what it looks like to hold rental real estate long term. And I'll use a property that Scott, my business partner, and I own. So we'll take you back a little bit. Back in May of 2002, we were right in the midpoint of our buying spree of rental real estate here in Indianapolis, and came across a deal in Mapleton Fall Creek, which back then was not a great area of Indianapolis. It was okay, but it wasn't considered to be a hot area. A lot of older homes, crime, just some difficult situations down there. But this property was turnkey, and it truly was. It was all new exterior, windows, it had freshly updated interiors, and it had 2 performing residents. And so we bought it. We overpaid for it. I remember always thinking about all the properties that we overpaid for, or one that we overpaid for, it was this one. We paid nearly $68,000 for a duplex, 3-bedroom, 1-bath aside duplex back in May of 2002. Again, in really good shape for its age. So we owned it for several years, and it was fine. It was never a property that we loved. Had some difficult residents back then. I remember a lot of drama when we used to self-manage surrounding some of those residents down there. And for whatever reason, like almost 16 years later, back in 2018, Scott and I decided to put it on the market. It was fully occupied, and we thought it's kind of the outside of the zone of where most of our rentals are. So let's try to sell the property. And so I listed it back in April of 2018 for $199,000. So it's a big spread. That's nearly $30,000 spread, or more than $130,000 spread from what we paid for it. And we got no activity. I remember listing it, no phone calls, no interest at all. We ended up reducing it one time down to 195, about 30 days into the listing. Again, no traction at all. And then I ended up actually withdrawing the listing a few months later because there was just no phone calls, no interest at all. And I was like, that's a bummer. But now I think that was such a great thing that we didn't sell that property. I think maybe a weird thing to say, but like talk about what's happened since then, it'll become very clear why I think that. So again, bought it for $68,000, tried to sell it for $195 back in 2018, couldn't do it. Fast forward to a few months ago, and we had a move out on one side, and talked to Scott. I said, let's try to sell the property again. Let's give it another go, and let's just leave the one side open because maybe we'll get a house hacker. It's become something that's makes sense for a lot of people, and I've heard other investor friends of mine have success doing it. So we ended up doing some kitchen updates, some bath updates, spent a little more money than we'd normally spend on just a regular tenant turn. And we put it on the market for $325,000. And we sold it for full list within 30 days. So again, just the quick numbers on it. Bought it in May of 2002 for $68,000. Sold it in March of 2026 for $325,000. Now, you may say, well, you had COVID, well, we owned this thing for a long time, and we saw all kinds of markets during those 20 plus years that we owned it. And I don't think this property is anything extraordinary in terms of the return that people that have owned property as long as we have are seeing. In fact, if we have no plans at this point to sell necessarily additional properties, but if we did, we would probably have similar, if not better, stories. And it's not that we found this great deal. We didn't. Again, I think we overpaid for this property even. It just goes to show that time will create wealth in real estate. I think our down payment for this property was around $5,000 to $6,000. There's just no way that $6,000 would have turned into $325,000 if we invested it in the stock market. So this real estate, I think, is the highest and best use of money. And again, it goes to show the power of owning real estate for a long time. We've said it a lot. Real estate is a get rich slow activity. I don't have any regrets necessarily. I think, we're talking about this at lunch today, Scott and I, is that what if we're talking about this property 5 years down the road and see that it's worth $500,000? Could that happen? Maybe not. But I am certainly glad we didn't sell it the first time and wait until now to sell it, because it certainly paid off.